Hey, welcome back to the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. We're back again on another Wednesday night. Tonight, we will once again set the time machine back to 1983. Last week, we were on 73. We're back to 83. We're going to delve into the world of heavy metal with an episode that was put together by Mr. Denny Barth himself. I think I might have added one album to it that you didn't have, but tonight we're going to chat on 6 albums. That's why we also have Denny back. Denny back because he has to be our scorekeeper because this is too
Fuck
many for me to
yeah.
count in my head. So 6 albums in alphabetical order. We have Anvil, Forged in Fire, which is the third studio album, of course, from the Canadian band. Exciter Heavy Metal Maniac, which is a debut album also from another Canadian band. We've got and then the third album we have Krokus Headhunter. It's the 7th studio album by the Swiss-based band. I can't even talk as usual. Manowar, Into Glory Round, this Glory Ride, the 2nd studio album by American-based heavy metal band Manowar, of course. Oz, Fire in the Brain, which is the 2nd studio album by the Finnish band. And finally, but not least, Raven, All for One, the 3rd studio album by the British heavy metal band. And we're going to briefly talk about these albums and we're going to rate them from 6 to 1. So it's not usual where we're just going to buy one record or the other. We've got to rank these albums in some kind of form. And Denny's got a lot of work. I hope he has a little caffeine. He got his thinking cap. He's got a lot of numbers here to rock and
Dude,
roll.
I'm already fired up.
He's fired up for tonight. And we're going to kick things off. Who's in my upper square tonight? We have Tony Dio. We're going to kick it off with Tony Dio, and we'll go right across to Miles and Ovi and Ralphus. Oh, Hansi's here.
Yeah.
Sorry. You gotta go. You gotta go first or second.
I can go second. That's fine.
All right, you're going second. So Hansi's going second, and then we go across the board.
All right. Well, this was a tough one to pick, the order because I love all 6 of these albums. I listen to them still in heavy rotation, all of them. But we're going to start out with Forged in Fire from Anvil. This is a good, solid Anvil record. Probably one of they had the first 3 albums are the 3 classic albums, and this was the third of the lot. And it's one of their best, I think, and I think my favorite Anvil record is probably the first one, but I like this one a lot. Free as the Wind I'm going to pick a couple of songs here. Free as the Wind and Forged in Fire going to be my top 2 off of this one, and this one is the CD signed by Rob and Lips when I met him a couple of years ago at a show. From there, I'm going to go with Krokus, Headhunter is my Japanese pressing I have here. Great album. It's probably the best Krokus album. It's definitely my favorite Krokus album. It's their most metal album because their earlier albums were kind of more AC/DC like. And this album, I think they really, really found their way on. It's more balls out metal. It's heavier. They've got their own style, and they tended to borrow a lot from other bands lyrically. And like I said, the AC/DC thing was very much present in the earlier stuff. But this one definitely is a heavier album. Pick a couple songs. I got to pick the title track, Headhunter, and I love Nightwolf on here. Another just great one.
Yeah.
From there, I'm gonna go with Manowar. The Into Glory Ride, the 2nd Manowar album. The first Manowar album, Battle Hymns, is my favorite. This is probably my 2nd favorite. I remember when this album was a newer record, there was a cable TV show used to come on Nickelodeon called Live Wire, and they actually performed on there during this period, and they played Gloves of Metal, and then they played Revelation, Death Angel, as the credits were rolling at the end. But yeah, this is definitely they're one of their most popular albums. That album cover is kind of crazy, but you got to imagine what the photo sessions. He said, I've never seen any outtakes from it or anything, but if I'm gonna pick a couple songs off this, I'm definitely gonna go with Secret of Steel. Love that one, and I love Revelation, Death Angel.
Ooh.
There, I'm gonna go to a band that I got into a little bit later. I remember Oz. When I first got in, I think the first Oz record I ever purchased was Third Warning, their third album, and I just didn't care much for it at all. And some years later, I kept seeing this. I mean, this is just an iconic album cover. Fire in the Brain. This one, I actually saw them a few years ago, and I got the singer and drummer Ape and Mark to sign it for me. But this is actually Quorthon from Bathory's hand.
Yep.
Flaming.
Yep.
And this is a great record. I mean, this doesn't even sound like Third Warning. This is just so much of a better record. And it's their best record for sure. A couple of tracks I like on here. I love the title track, Fire in the Brain, and Gambler. Just wanted to show this. Here's a 12-inch single for Turn the Cross Upside Down, a song that's not on the album. It's got a similar album cover, but it did pair a couple of songs, Gambler and Searchlight, from Fire in the Brain onto this one.
I need that.
If this song had been on Fire in the Brain, it would just made it even better, because Turn the Cross Upside Down is one of their best songs. From there, I'm going to go Raven, All for One. And I love this record. This is my favorite Raven album. It's the first one I ever got, and it's still my favorite one. They were very, I mean, this is when they toured with Metallica, was the Kill 'Em All for One tour. And this is just a great record. It's very influential. I mean, they were new wave of British metal band, but they kind of spearheaded this whole speed metal thing along with Anvil. And so a lot of people like them because they had the fast songs and so forth. But a couple of tracks off of this one. I love the title track, All for One, and Mind Over Metal is a great song as well. This one's actually autographed by Mark and John. And here is a 12-inch single for the song Break the Chain. It's on here. Cool. Another great song. And my number one is definitely going to be Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac, one of my all-time favorite albums. This one's signed by all three original members. Awesome. This is a solid record. I mean, this is just top-notch speed metal, borderline thrash. It's dark, it's fast, it's just menacing. It's got so many great songs on it. My favorite tracks on here will be Stand Up and Fight and Heavy Metal Maniac, just like back to back. And and I got to throw Iron Dogs in there. You got to have the top three, And I've been lucky enough to see these guys a few times over the last couple of years. They were just one of those bands I thought I'd never get to see. And I finally saw the original lineup. I saw a version that John Ritchie had. I saw him at one of the Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles Fest back 15 years or so ago. But it was just him with a different band. And then seeing the original band reform at Defenders of the Old several years back in Brooklyn, it's just a dream come true. A friend of mine at the time said, "Man, I've never seen you go off like that at a show." And I was like, that was just something I thought I'd never see. I mean, they just blew my mind. It was so cool. It was like growing up being a big Kiss fan. I thought I'd never see Kiss with makeup. And when they finally did a reunion tour, that's just, I put this in the same boat with that is seeing Kiss with the makeup for the first time, as seeing Exciter, original three guys perform together. It just blew my mind. Cool. And John's retired now, and they've got Daniel DK in now, and he's definitely kicked them in gear and keeping them going. And they'll be at the Chainsaw Fest next weekend. I can't wait to see them again.
Cool.
Yeah. So Exciter's my number one.
Excellent. So now we're moving along here as we're under a time thing tonight. So we're over to Mr. Hansi Hilmer, and he has to go to work as usual. So he was going to give us his 2 cents and hang out. And it's always a pleasure to have you on.
Hey guys, how's it going? Sorry. Yeah, I have a shitty job, but I don't work Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays.
That's a good thing.
So, yeah, I got 3 weekends off. Anyway, yeah, so I'll let Denis do all the stories tonight. I'm not going to say much to these things. I'm going to start with number 6 on the list. What is going to be Anvil, Fortune Fire, Um, I like Metal on Metal. It's my favorite Anvil album. It's I just I bought it the day it came out on vinyl. It's I love it. It's one of those classics. This album didn't do it for me, honestly. There's a couple of good songs on here, like the title track, and I like Hot Times, Fast Ladies. Believe it or not, it's a great song. I love it. I got my history with Anvil. I played with them a million times, and I'm gonna leave it with that. Um, moving over to number 5, I'm gonna have to go with Krokus on this one as well. I know almost Tony Dio's list is exactly like mine. There's only I think like one thing different, but anyway, Krokus Headhunter, um, great record. I've seen him on that tour in 1983, 83, 84, something like that. And I still love One Vice at a Time, the album before this. Long Stick Goes Boom. I always thought was freaking just awesome. But anyway, um, 2 songs of this record, Headhunter and Night Wolf. Absolutely my 2 favorite songs on this album. I didn't like some of the like Screaming in the Night. I thought was very commercialized already for back then, and I didn't really I don't care for this song nowadays, honestly. But anyway, moving on to number 4, it's gonna be Manowar, Into Glory Ride. I agree again. First Manowar album, untouchable. Still my favorite Manowar, but I also like Hail to England and uh, you know, what was it? The one before that. Anyway,
Sign the Hammer.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Sign of the Hammer. Thank you very much. Great record. I thought it was a little bit. Uh, I love Warlord, the first song, because just of that, that intro. When I was a teenager, I thought this was like ballsy and gutsy. And when they would play this, with the sex, whatever scene going there, I thought it was hilarious. Absolutely love it. And Gloves of Metal is like one of my favorite Manowar songs. Absolutely love it, especially live. You know, um, but again, not the greatest album in my opinion. Number 3, John is gonna hate me now. Raven, All for One, my favorite Raven album as well. I love this album absolutely to the death, and it's John knows how I feel about it. Couple of songs of this album, the title track, Mind Over Metal, and I'm gonna say Take Control. You have to take that song, also that song in there. This is a hot list. Denis, I want to tell you, you an asshole for putting these together. You made me think for like almost a week. I sat here and had to like goggle this around. But anyway, moving forward, and here's where I made the difference with Tony Dio's list. Number 2 for me, Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac. One of the greatest records ever done. I love it. Absolutely love Exciter. It's one of my favorite bands of all time. But I'm more into their stuff of Violence and Force. I thought the second album, I like it a little better. I don't know why. Maybe it was a time when when I was like roaming around that I like it better. But still, Exciter's first album absolutely rules. I own it in like 4 or 5 different versions. So yeah, absolutely love it. The songs, Heavy Metal Maniac title track, and Stand Up and Fight. Just to say 2. This whole record, Iron Dogs. This whole record just absolutely rules supreme. But here we go. Number 1, I had to go with the Mighty Oz from Sweden because not just like Tony Dio already said, also the album before, Third Warning, I like a few songs, like the song Third Warning. I think it's pretty fucking cool.
Yes, all right.
But the rest of the album is definitely a little. I own it, but it's really kind of boring when you listen to Fire in the Brain, honestly. But I remember when this album came out, Fire in the Brain, and I tell you what, this is one of those records I only bought because of the album cover. I had no idea who these cats were. Picked it up because seen the the fist, with the spikes and the candle. I said, "It's got to be good. This got to be metal, as hell." And from the minute I put this record on, I couldn't stop listening to it. I to this day I play this record on a regular, and when people come over to my house and they ask me about old school metal, this will be played. And people say, "Who the hell is Oz? Ozzy?" And I'm like, "No, man, check this out." Anyway, not my number one record on this list. The songs "Fire in the Brain," "Gambler," "Searchlights," and "Megalomaniac" absolutely rules supreme. I mean, this whole album rules, but this is my favorite record out of the six. And that was hard because they're all really good records.
Yeah.
There's a few missing, definitely for sure. One of them, Dio Holy Diver, should have maybe been on there. But anyway, we can't put them all out there. But Denis,
Mhm.
you done a good job putting this list together. This was a tough one. And I will join in 2 weeks for the Metallica, Overkill, and Megadeth and all the new
Cool.
stuff. 'Cause I got some stories for you right there that you like. I'm gonna have a little bit of more time actually that
Good.
night. I think the
Cool.
next day, not going in late.
All right, thank
So
you.
anyway, thank you guys very much for having me on again. And I of course will watch this all later and show
Mhm.
everybody in Germany and everywhere else. And keep your eyes open and ears open for Buried Faith. That's right.
Cool, man. Cool. And just to mention, viewers, that it did mention Dio Holy Diver. We did touch on that on a different episode. So we've done some 83s already. So we didn't include any of the albums we have chatted on
Gotcha.
already.
This was
Yeah.
more underground
a
band.
little more
Yeah,
under,
yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely. I totally
righty.
understand it. Yeah.
So we'll keep this thing rolling. I'm going to go next to. We're going to Louisiana, down by New Orleans to see the man that'll wrestle alligators when he gets done with this podcast.
Yeah, so I might wrestle the alligator because I've been frustrated with ranking these albums because they're all amazing albums. I think all these albums are really, really awesome. Yeah, Denny, you did one on this one. I think I changed my list like 5 times going through this. But believe it or not, I'm about to sound like a broken record because number 6 is Anvil, Forged in Fire. I like this album. I really do like it. 2 songs I would pick off of here is Forged in Fire and Free as the Wind.
Okay.
Kind of sounding like a little bit of a broken record here, but I love the guitar riffs on this record. It's all great, but just the other ones ahead of it I liked a little bit more. And going in at number 5, Krokus, Headhunter. The only song I don't like off this record is Screaming in the Night.
Wow.
Yeah, and the only reason why I don't really like it is because I liked it the first time I heard it, but for some reason, my classic rock radio station just discovered this song and
Really?
they play it all the time. Yes, and I'm kind of sick of it. But
I can't believe a radio station's playing that in Louisiana in
yes,
2023.
Yeah, it's been
Play
picked
it
up
all-
heavily by classic rock radio.
Wow.
play
over the
it
last few
all
years.
the time.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean it's a good song for what it is, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
about tired of it at this point. But the title track, Headhunter, great ripping song. Ready to Burn, I like that song as well. That's a great song. And Nightwolf is my favorite song off this record. Number 4, Manowar, In the Glory Ride. Going into this record, I will say that I wasn't the biggest fan of this record when I first heard it, but it grew on me a lot. I thought it did a lot of weird shit, but because I like battle hymns more. But I like this record for what it is now. I thought Gloves of Metal and Secret of Steel are 2 great songs off this record. I like what I really enjoy about this record is like the rawness of it. The drums on this record just sound like raw and thunderous, and I just love it. And Ross the Boss's guitar playing is great. I mean, it's a great record, but obviously I just like few a little bit more. Coming in at number 3, I'm going with Raven, All for One. Um, my introduction to Raven when growing up, I think this was the first Raven record I ever heard back in the day. And I hated Raven because I didn't like this album. But once I get it, and I obviously own the record now because it was original and it was like cheap back in the day. But I didn't like Raven, but going back into their earlier catalog, I was like, man, this is probably the album that I probably heard first was probably the worst one, and come to find out, yeah, it is the worst one because they are fucking great. Like the speed metal on here is just great. I like Run Silent, Run Deep on here. Break the Chains, great, and Mind Over Metal, probably my favorite song on here. Now, these next 2 records are fucking fantastic. 100%, 10 out of 10 records for me. Number 2, Fire in the Brain by Oz. The guitars on this record absolutely fucking rip. Every song on this record rips. I'm gonna say this, that the vocals are not the biggest turn on for me, but you know, just turning this album all the way up with those guitar riffs throughout this whole record completely make up for that, because this album is a total fucking ripper of a fucking album. Songs I love off of here: Searchlights, The Gambler, Stop Believing, Black Candles is even awesome. Great shit on this record. But coming in at number 1, and when I seen the list of it, it was always number 1 and never got off of number 1, and that's Heavy Metal Maniac. I fucking listened to this record all the time. This is the most listened to record out of all these. This album absolutely slays in my opinion. I'd give it an 11 out of 10. 2 songs. Well, I'm gonna go 3 songs. Stand Up and Fight, Heavy Metal Maniac, Iron Dogs, Mistress of Evil. I mean, all these songs on here I would not skip. This is just a fucking classic, classic album. And yeah, looking at all these albums, whenever we going for the episode, I was like, yep, Heavy Metal Maniac's gonna be number 1, but I'm gonna give it a good listen to all the albums, and yep, never left number 1. So my favorite out of all these 6, Heavy Metal Maniac, 100%.
Awesome. Thank you, Miles. We're going to move over across to all the way from Louisiana to Norway for the vampire. Even though Count is on there, he is our vampire because he's up all night.
Yeah,
Obi, welcome. Let's see what you got to say.
thank you, thank you. Well, this was a interesting assignment for me because I have never heard any of these albums before.
Wow.
These are all 6 new albums for me because it's not my genre I listen to, because I grew up in the 90s, so the much more brutal albums was already there. So for me, this was kind of under my radar because it wasn't as heavy as the 90s stuff. But it was a really good assignment for me. I call it Dennis Rumble of '83. But it was, so the really thing I really liked about it is to discover a lot of new music, and I love to discover new music. So this was a really fun assignment. So thank you, Dennis. I'll just get to it. My number 6 is the Raven. Reason why it's number 6 is because it got high vocals, like wailing vocals, which is not my cup of tea. It's just a matter of taste. It doesn't have anything to do with the band at all. Songs I did like though was Running Silent, Running Deep, and Seek and Destroy. For number 5, I think this is going to be everyone, Krokus. And songs I liked was Nightwolf and Stay Awake All Night. I'm just going to pass on here to number 4, which is Manowar. I never listened to this album before, and the first song started and was like, the hi-hats on the drums, it was so in the front of everything in the song. I was like, has this album been rushed, or has it been like, because the producers had really given these guys a hard time? So I tried to listen also to the remixed and remastered version. It was in 2019 it came out, I think.
Didn't like that at all.
Yeah, just to listen to the difference. But I'm not going to be any special here tonight either, because my favorite songs here are Gloves of Metal, Secret of Steel, and Revelation.
Okay.
And then we go up to number 3, which is Anvil. I guess I put them a little higher because I really like the guitar tone. It was like some songs reminded me like they are a fan of Iron Maiden, and then they are like a little inspiration for Slayer. I feel like in the guitar way. That especially one song, I can't recall which song, but it was a song that had kind of what Slayer would have a little later, like in '85 or something. Songs I liked was Future Wars and Winged Assassins.
Yeah.
And number 2 is Exciter. I really liked this album. It was pretty heavy for '83, and gotta be they're Canadian, or they?
Yes.
Yeah, Canada has a lot of good stuff.
Oh yeah.
And my favorite songs too here was Iron Dogs and Under Attack and World War III. And for the first, and I can't believe I haven't heard this album before. I was like, was this is really cool stuff. I really liked it. And yeah, it's one I played the most. They like I would probably, if I am going to go back to any of these albums, Oz is going to be the one. And I liked the best songs I liked here was Black Candles, Free Me, Leave Me, and Fire in the Brain.
Cool.
So I didn't kick up the dust too much tonight.
Yeah.
You didn't stir up too much trouble tonight.
No.
Stir up the dust. So thank you, Ovi, for your time. And now we're gonna move over to my center square. I don't know if he is for everybody else watching, but it's our local rock and heavy metal collector and a bit of a historian. We got Cal Ralphus, and he's got all the stuff hanging up behind him already. Look at it.
I got them all on vinyl except for one. The one I don't have on vinyl is Oz. When I was a kid, none of my friends had it. I would see the advertisements for the album all the time, but I don't even really remember seeing it in stores. So I never just like grabbed it as a impulse buy. And I've heard it throughout the years, but it's one of those things like years later, it's hard to get into something that you weren't listening to way back then.
Yeah.
But in this episode, I listened to it twice, and it fit in so good with Raven, Anvil, and Manowar. Like it just they all have like around the same heaviness, and it's so cool because they're all from different places, but they all kind of fit in that era before thrash metal, where it's like they're just about as heavy as each other. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go number 6 with Oz. I like Stop Believing, Free Me, Leave Me, Fire in the Brain, the title track. I thought it was really good. I would liked it a lot more if I had it back in the day, but it was the one I didn't. So then number 5, Krokus with Headhunter. I love this album. It's probably the album I played the most in 1983. And I seen them the next album when they played the Blitz tour, which that album sucked. And they looked like this album
Did.
sucked. But I was still so into Headhunter that I wanted to hear some of those songs. And the show that I went to was at the Civic Center. White Lion opened up, and that show got broadcast on MTV back in the day.
Wow.
The whole show was on MTV, and I know I was on camera. We all watched it at a friend's house. Me and Jay actually went to that show together.
I don't know if I went to that show or not. Well, who was it? Krokus and White Lion by themselves?
Yep, Krokus and White Lion. I think there might have been a third band that opened the show.
I might have been done with them by then.
Probably.
I didn't go, yeah. For some reason. I don't remember myself ever seeing White Lion other when they played the fairgrounds opening up for somebody here that we were just hanging out at.
Yeah, I don't think White Lion even had an album out at the time. And when they came out, they looked just like Van Halen. I mean, they had the moves and everything was exactly.
Wow.
I thought they were a Van Halen like tribute band. I never got into them either. But so yeah, I love the song Headhunter is one of the heaviest songs out of on all these albums. It's such a great, like almost pre-thrash song, but the whole album's not like that. But Night Wolf and Ready to Burn, 2 more great songs on that. Then I'm gonna go number 3. I'm gonna go Raven, All for One. Another great album. I like Mind Over Metal, Seek and Destroy, Hung, Drawn, and Quartered. I think is my favorite song on the album. Just, great for that time. I really like them. Anvil, Forged in Fire is going to be my number 4. I love Motor Mount, Future Wars, Winged Assassins. They were the first underground band I ever seen right around this time at the Rock 3, JB's Rock 3.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I told the story when we did our local Middletown show about how our friend Cavluzzi, who does the show with us sometimes, his father dropped us off at the show. And then he came into the show looking to take us out, but the show was running late. So we seen him walking through the crowd looking for us. And we were little kids, so we were hiding behind all these other people. And then Lip from Anvil pulls out the dildo and starts playing a solo with the dildo.
That's great.
Yeah, and then you fast forward like 30 something years, and I've seen Anvil opening up for AC/DC at Giant Stadium with 80,000 people, sold out crowd. So what a difference,
Mm.
Then my number 2 is Manowar, Into Glory Ride, like Warlord, Gloves of Metal, Revelation, and they're just, I love this whole album. There's nothing bad on this album, but this was, like everybody's saying, is a really tough one. So they had to be number 2. And like a lot of us, Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac, number 1. They're such an important band to me. They were one of those real important links right before thrash metal, where it's like still like speed metal stuff. And there's those handful of bands in there that you get into before you really find the really heavy thrash stuff. So Manowar is one of those gateway bands. And Iron Dog's Heavy Metal Maniac title track and Stand Up and Fight, my 3 favorite songs on that. And that's it for me.
Cool. Thanks, Ralph. I'm going to move over to Mr. Stephen Levin next, and we're going to go over to Ed, to Christian, who's back on tonight after a little time off from the channel, then to Denny Barth, and then I'll round things up and we'll give you, and Denny will come back and give you the standing.
All right. Hey, guys. Nice to be
Welcome.
here. Always great. Sometimes revisiting these albums is great. And sometimes you get stuff that you're like surprised how good it sounds. And sometimes stuff does not stand the test of time.
Mhm.
So to move right through, my number 6 is Krokus Headhunter. Like was said before by Tony and Miles, they went from AC/DC to like a metal band, almost like thrashy, in 1983. And I actually saw them on this tour. I think they played up at Music Mountain. So, I always liked Krokus. I thought they were good. I actually did like the album before this a little bit better. Long Stick Ghost Boom's gonna always be my favorite Krokus song, but that's not on here. So my 2 favorites on this one would be Headhunter, Eat the Rich, and I'll throw in Night Wolf too, which was another great song. It was definitely better than I thought it was going to be as far as standing the test of time. I would rate this like a 5 out of 10 for myself personally. My number 5 album is Anvil, Forged in Fire. Now this was funny because this one I expected to rank higher for me, but going back and listening to it, it didn't sound that good to me. It seemed like it had a bunch of filler material, and it was nowhere near as good as Metal on Metal, which will always be my favorite album. And I happen to be a really big Anvil fan. I've seen him a bunch of times. I've seen him twice on my actual birthday. The last time I saw him, I actually got somebody had said, I know who it was. It was Ricky Zazzola told Lips to say happy birthday to me. So I got a happy birthday from Lips right from the stage. So thank you, Ricky. Really appreciate that. Makes you feel all warm inside to hear Lips say happy birthday to you. But and of course after that he pulls out the dildo. So great band. I love them. Like I said, this album did not stand the test of time for me so much. I would give it a 6 out of 10. A little bit better than the Krokus for me. It was definitely a band that really needs to be appreciated for what they did. Rob Reiner was so far ahead of his time as far as his drumming goes. And I mean, even to this day, I saw them last year, just about a year ago now. And holy shit, man, Rob can still play those drums, let me tell you. My favorite songs in this were Motor Mount, Winged Assassin, and the title track, Forged in Fire. So moving right along, next up would be Manowar, Into Glory Ride. Great album. This one actually, once again, it sounded a little bit better than I thought it was going to sound. I love the song March for Revenge. That's one of my favorite songs from them. It just has this great melody to it. And it's funny because as I find out, like some of these bands, the next album I'll go on to, I'll say more about it, but they have this hook. And that hook actually ends up being, in case anybody was wondering, is actually the melody line in the song. And, you know, for me, like saying that I like melodies is kind of stupid because, you know, you wouldn't think I do, but, you know, that's the hook. And some of these bands really have it. So for finishing up with Manowar, my favorite songs were the opener, Warlord, Hatred, you know, when he says, black blood runs through my veins. I mean, that's great, man. How can you not love that? And as I said before, March for Revenge, one of my favorites. Next up, Raven on one. This is not my favorite Raven album, but it's a great album nonetheless. This one all really did sound a lot better than I thought it was going to sound to my ears. Some of the songs I forgot on it, just they sounded great. I love Wiped Out, and I love their first album too. But Wiped Out is really my favorite. And Raven really has those hooks with songs like Crash Bang Wallop and stuff. They just really, you hear them and they just get stuck in your head all day. And what a great band. I've seen them a bunch of times, and I've seen them with Anvil a couple times, going back as far as 82. And the funny thing is, me and my buddy Gary D, who I've mentioned before, we always had the argument. You know, he always liked Anvil a little bit more, and I always liked Raven a little bit more, because to me, Raven they had more technical stuff going on. When you listen to some of their drums and everything, it's almost like he's playing like jazz beats and stuff. He was playing on upbeat, tons of double bass way before anybody else was. Just a great band. My favorite songs on this album were Take Control, Mind Over Metal, and Hung, Drawn, and Quartered, which I really adore. And the album really stood the test of time. Give it a 7 out of 10. And the next one up, and this was funny because if this album had been against on almost any other episode, it would have been the #1 choice. But next one is Oz, Fire in the Brain. I mean, come on, guys. I don't have to say anything you guys haven't already said. Other than the fact that, you know, when you saw the names on the back, Ape DeMartini and Speedy Fox and Spooky Wolf, like you knew you were going to get something good. You had to, you know, and just a fantastic album, stands the test of time. This is one that I still do listen to all the time. I mean, to say it's your favorite Oz album is kind of silly because the other ones don't even come close to it. You know what I mean? Third Warning is like, and the first one was not near as good either. My favorite songs are Searchlights, which starts off with that, get up, which I think he's saying get him, you know, which would make sense because Searchlights and everything. And Fire in the Brain, Take One, you know, great song. Black Candles, amazing atmosphere to it, great band. Give this one a 9 out of 10, which only leaves Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac. Canada knows what they're doing. I mean, this album crushes. This, I can't say enough about it. This is, like Ralph was saying, this is proto thrash. This is what came out before thrash metal. This is what evolved into thrash metal. Bands like this and Acid from Belgium. These are the bands that were like really like just doing it. And Heavy Metal Maniac's going to always be one of my favorites. I saw them tour for the next album. I don't think they had made it to the States before that. It was at Capitol Theater with Merciful Fate and Motorhead. That was a hell of a show.
I was there.
My favorite songs on here are Holocaust, going into Stand Up and Fight. I just love that. It just kind of fades in and it's like, I mean, it's a fucking chainsaw, man. I mean, is the guy really, is he playing a guitar or is he firing up a fucking 10-foot long he's going to cut a tree down with? It's amazing. Iron Dog. My favorite, though, Under Attack. Those fucking drums. Are you kidding me, man? Mind-blowing album. So far ahead of their time. And here's the great reveal of the shirt tonight. An original shirt with the tag. Thank you, King Fowley, for your awesome auctions. I love you for doing that. I know Ed knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. I thank you very much.
Thank you. And if you're in the Middletown area, come out on Friday night. You can see Mr. 11 perform on stage with Mechanical Menace, their debut show, correct?
Yes, sir. Our first real live show with a bunch of great bands. Really looking forward to it. My buddy Duke, the Duke of New York, got these shirts done, so we're gonna have shirts. We only have 40 made, so first comes, first serve. I hope to sell these damn things out because I need to make my money back.
For sure, for sure. The abuse ritual will be there, sick bay, servant of sorrow, and violent by design, along with you guys. So, and it's free to get in. So come on over and hang out with us.
Gonna be a
Next
great.
in line is a gentleman that runs the Armageddon Productions. Ed Farsley is here. Also going to be working next weekend at the Chainsaw Fest in North Carolina with Tony Dio, and we're going to do an episode on that as soon as we're done with this. So we got to get through this one. We got about 50 minutes left. So, no, maybe 40 minutes left. We're getting there.
All right. What can you say? 1983. Fantastic year for metal. I keep saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it. It's one of the best years, period. So many albums. And these are 6 of the great albums, no question about it. 6 influential albums. Starting off, Manowar. I'm going to mix the order up a little bit myself, personally. My number 6 album is Manowar, Into Glory Ride. Utmost respect for the band. Never really been a fan. Just like Kiss, which is a band I just never really got into that everybody else loves. This album is good, but like I said, not really being a fan just doesn't really do it for me. Gates of Valhalla, my favorite Manowar song. That's just a flawless song. It's a great song. Otherwise, March of Revenge, another good song, but otherwise, not the best album in my opinion. My number 5 album, Anvil, Forged in Fire. I already had the first 2 albums at this point, so when this one album came out, I was very excited. I loved it right away. Great songs. Winged Assassins, Forged in Fire, Free as the Wind. I love that song as a kid. I still love it today. Favorite Anvil song. Just a really, really great song. Next band. Pretty much the next 4 albums are 4 albums that I've never really taken out of heavy rotation. All just flawless, fantastic, classic albums. Got to start off somewhere. So I'm going to start off my number 4 album, Oz, Fire in the Brain. Absolutely loved it as a kid. Just like everyone mentioned, you saw that album cover, you saw the band names, and it was like, oh, this has got to be good. And it was. I think I got this album before I had the first album. But the first album does not compare, as everyone has mentioned. I was very fortunate in 2013. I brought the band over here for an 8-night tour with October 31. We called it the Turn the States Upside Down tour. So bringing them over here was like, just, what can you say? I was floored by the opportunity of it. They were such great guys. The tour was a success. And hell, I brought Oz over for the first time in the U.S., so it was good times.
Thank you. Great.
Album, just killer album. What can you say? Searchlights, Stop Believing, Black Candles, Fire in the Brain. Just perfect heavy metal songs in every way. Next album, Krokus, Headhunter. I love Krokus. I love not so much the first couple albums, but the 3 albums before this one, just fantastic. And even the Blitz, I love most of the Blitz. But Krokus is one of my bands that, in my opinion, Krokus, Accept, Saxon are as vital and as incredible as Maiden, AC/DC, Priest, Sabbath, the heavyweights. This album is Krokus is pinnacle. They're classic in my opinion. Love the albums before it, but this is my favorite. Never stop listening to it. Never will stop listening to it. It's just fantastic in every way. Let's see here. Every song kicks ass, really. Headhunter is one of my favorite Krokus songs, period. Just a brutal, almost thrash song. Screaming in the Night, Eat the Rich, Russian Winter, Nightwolf. It's all great stuff. Next band. This is where I mix from everybody else. Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac. I had a hell of a hard time picking between these last 2 bands, the last 2 albums, because they're both just 10 plus in every way. Just absolute classics. But gotta pick something. So Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac is my number 2. I had bought Heavy Metal Maniac and All for One at the same time. My second trip to Rock and Roll Heaven in Clark, New Jersey. So I remember it very well picking up the album. What can you say? As soon as the album starts off with the intro, it just, you're in for something epic and something just mind-blowing. And boom, Stand Up and Fight kicking into that is just the hell of a beginning. And just from there, it never lets up. Iron Dogs, Mistress of Evil, Under Attack. Every song is fantastic. Black Witch is possibly my favorite Exciter song. I love the atmosphere of it, the mood. It's just fantastic song. Let's see here. I am beyond psyched to be seeing them again next week in Carolina Chainsaw Fest. So that's going to be a trip. Number one album, Raven All for One. Like I said, I remember distinctly getting it. I remember listening to it and falling in love with it right away, and never falling out of love with it. Raven had a little hiccup, later in their career, a few years later, with some of their albums not being so great. But the first three albums are flawless, and this is just their pinnacle, their epic in my opinion. I'm so psyched that they're doing this album for the 40th anniversary on tour. Can't wait for them to come around here at the end of this year. I had the pleasure of working with Raven. I booked them, definitely 3, maybe even 4 times in the last 12 years. Great fucking guys. Just John and Mark is fantastic. I could go into stories about booking them, but we don't have time, so we'll do that another night. We're just the greatest guys. Every song on this album, fantastic in every way. All-time favorite song, Run Silent, Run Deep. Just awesome in every way. There you have it. Absolute perfection here. Fantastic records in every way. Take it away.
Well, if we have a little extra time, then I'll reach back over there and see if you go. Well, and you can tell us a story if we got enough time. I hate rushing everybody, but we're trying to help out John later and do a little episode for him. So, Christian, welcome. Marino. Did I get it right tonight?
No.
I never do. I never do. No.
One of these days we'll get it, I'm sure.
I'm not the only one that messes it up, I'm sure.
No. So, yeah, no, it's good to be back on the channel again after being off for a few weeks. So I think I'm kind of in the same camp as Obi with this. So 4 of these albums, I really wasn't that familiar with at all, even though I was familiar with most of the bands. So my list ranking is going to be probably a bit skewed here, but at the same time, I'm sure if I did this again next week, it could be completely different. But anyway, number 6 for me is going to be Manowar and Glory Ride. So Manowar was just one of those bands I never really got into that much. I always thought they were kind of a little bit, I don't know, they just seemed like a little bit too silly, I guess. But anyway, listening to this album, I thought it was actually pretty good. Opening track with the Warlord is a good song, and you have the the chick moaning there in the beginning. It seems to a little bit, but good album opener. And Secrets of Steel, I think, is also another really good track there. So number 5, and some of you might be shocked I'm putting it this low now because everyone was ranking this higher, but I still thought it was really good, is Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac. I just think it's good classic, just aggressive speed metal. Stand Up and Fight is a great one. The title track, Heavy Metal Maniac. Iron Dog it has this cool, deep, heavy groove to it. But yeah, they kind of reminds me of like like Judas Priest, but just like dirtier and grimier and like more aggressive, but not quite thrash yet, but definitely really good. So number 4, and I don't think I've ever heard of this band prior to putting this together. That would be for Oz, Fire in the Brain. This is a freaking killer album. It's less than 30 minutes. I was surprised like how quick it went, but it's memorable nonetheless. Like a Megalomaniacs, I thought was a great track. Black Candles, Free Me, Leave Me. Moving up to number 3, I'm going to go with Anvil, Forged in Fire. This is another band that, I know who they are. I've seen the movie and everything. I've never really listened to too much, but I was pleasantly surprised by this. Is I think pretty much everything here. But I like the title track on that one. It's epic. It's heavy. Free as the Wind, another one that I really liked. And Shadow Zone, I thought was a cool song. So coming up to my number 2 pick. Now this is a band that I did discover in the 90s, and I discovered them because they played the cover of School's Out, that video on Beavis and Butthead, and they're making fun of it. And then I happen to just go and it's kind of silly, but I go to the record store and then I see this there. I'm like, oh, that's Krokus. I'm like, they're gonna be like that goofy band that I saw. But then I put the record. I was, I guess, disappointed that they weren't as goofy as I thought they were. I'm like, wow, these guys are actually pretty good. I think my favorite two tracks, I got to go with the title track, Headhunter, and then probably the closing track, Russian Winter. But I think everything on this record is pretty good though. So that would leave me with my my number one choice, which is going to be Raven, All for One. I don't know. There's just this album just has a certain charm to it. It's brash, it's heavy. I love the title track. Take Control, Run Silent, Run Deep is another really good one. The version with bonus tracks, I don't know if anyone's heard this, but there's a duet with Udo Dirkschneider, and he does Born to Be Wild. Honestly, I'm not crazy about that one. Their vocal styles together.
They're screaming. It's hilarious.
Yeah, they just don't go
I remember that. Yeah.
Another bonus track on here where Udo does some singing where they're not singing together. Not the Inquisitor, I think, is the name of the track. I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty good. But
John, that one. That's actually Udo only sings on the one song. That's actually Raven doing that themselves. Yeah, John sings that. That song actually was on. I forgot to mention that. I'm glad you actually brought it up, Christian, because I totally forgot about it. Because that actually is my favorite Raven song. That came out on the Lead Weight compilation back in like 1981, and it was not recorded quite as well. So this was like an updated version of that. And holy shit, that song rips. That's another one that's just
killer.
So thrashy. But yeah, that actually is John singing. Udo only did the one song, and it's god awful. Holy crap.
But Udo's also down as a producer on that album too. He's got a credit for producing the album.
Yeah, he and Michael Wagner. Yeah. Yep.
Actually, one thing going back to Krokus, I know Tom Allen was the one that produced this, so I think they were, they definitely wanted to go in that direction. Like, all right, we got to get Priest's producer.
Yeah, Rob Halford's on one of the tracks, I believe.
Really?
He sings backup. He sings backup on one of the songs. Can't remember which one it is.
Man, cool. Raven is also the only band on this that I've seen live. I saw them, I want to say it was back in 2014 or 15. They played this small club, just a bar here in Seymour, Connecticut, called, I think it's Dewey's Pub was the name. They since closed down. But it's funny. So he was between one of the songs, the singer was telling a story about, when they were first starting out, they would play shows with like punk bands and the crowd and everyone was like tight together, and he's like, our faces were as close like this, and he gets up right in my buddy's face like this close. I'm just like, and my buddy was just like shocked. He's just like standing there. He almost looks like just this like awkward stare. But it was just funny. Anytime I get a chance, I bring that story up just to
Cool.
Yeah, they're definitely some real characters. Their first drummer used to play with like hockey gear on, like a hockey helmet.
Oh, actually,
yeah. Sparks shooting out the top of it. And stuff.
Yeah, way over the top.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I remember from back then, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
What's that whole gimmick with the hockey and all that back?
Athletic Rock.
Athletic
Rock. Yeah,
got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I saw there's a band coming into town named Reeking Aura, and he was at one of the shows at Quinn's. They're playing there in July, and his is agricultural death metal. So we're coming up with new genres every day. We got athletic metal, we got
death metal. Wow.
So, well, anyhow, Christian, thank you so much. You know what I'm going to do, Denny? I'm going to switch things up. I'm going now, and then you can close it out because it's your episode, man.
All right.
And then you can give us a score when we're done. And so I have not listened to any of these albums in full. I would say probably since the 80s. Probably kicked me off the show to them. But, I've heard of many of the tracks from some of these albums, a lot. And, from just having them on shuffle in the store and whatnot, but listening to them from start to finish, It's been a long time. So all these 83s, this was before I even had a record store. I was a kid that didn't have, I was a young kid that didn't have hardly any money. I worked as a security guard, made like $62 a week and worked flea markets on the weekend. So I didn't have money to buy all these records, but surprisingly, I think I've owned most of the records on here back in the day. As I remember, except for maybe the Raven, because I never got into Raven when I was younger. But anyhow, here we go. As I listened to all these, it was kind of hard to list some of them, but number 6, I'm going with Krokus. I was never a huge fan of Krokus. I respected them, and I loved the song Headhunter. And I probably kind of like the commercial song, too, Screaming in the Night that Miles hears on the radio, which I've never heard on the radio, I don't think ever up here. But I also
XM radio, you hear it all the time too.
Oh yeah, they play it all the time on Boneyard, don't they? They
All
do.
the
Yes,
time.
okay, yeah, of course they do. You know, the same 100 songs on Boneyard. But number 5, I'm gonna go with Anvil. And of course, Forge and Fire, the title track. I'm a little bit with Levin with this. I hadn't listened to this album, as I just explained, and going back to revisit it, I don't I mean, I don't think it's their best Anvil record, and that's why I'm bringing it at 5. I also like Winged Assassins for my second tune. Going on to number 4, I'm going to go with Oz. I'll go with the title track, Fire in the Brain, which is a song I remember. I also kind of dug the song Gambler for some reason. I was listening to it a couple times today at work. I think it's a great album also, but it's just hard to list it. And a band I never liked back then that has grown on me over the years. I think when we were doing an episode on them a couple of years ago during the pandemic, Raven, the Mind Over Metal. I didn't really listen to them back in the day. I like the Mind Over Metal song on it, and Sledgehammer would be the 2 songs I'm going to go with from the Raven album. And then we are at, what am I missing here? I'm at number 3. If I have 2 left, correct? I'm going to go with Exciter for number 2. Under Attack and Stand Up and Fight. This could change, but it was hard for me to go against Manowar in any way or form. So I'm going to go with Manowar for number 1. I love Gloves of Metal. The Revelation. I like the Gates of Valhalla a lot too. I've been a big Manowar fan, and I do like cheesy metal sometimes, so maybe that's why they're number 1. It's epic, it's barbarian. So that's my list. A little bit brief, but
Yeah, you put
here we are.
Manowar number 1.
Other bands
first
play
one.
Manowar, kill.
Yeah, something like that. That's not my favorite Manowar album, though, for sure. I like Hail to England much better, personally.
Were you at that show with the Chants when they took their swords and threw them
Yes.
stage at the end, and the Chants management flipped out, man?
That was the show, and I think we were all very that you were there, and I just knew you at the time because of your back patch.
My tank.
Your painted jacket, and
Yep.
Duke was there, and Spike. Yeah, I was there, and my ears still have tinnitus from that night.
Yeah, I had a Hilltown 80s jacket. And yeah, that was actually the loudest show I ever heard. And I'm going to give Manowar credit for me starting to wear earplugs at a very young age, which has probably saved my hearing, because most of my friends laugh at me. Oh, you wear earplugs? Well, yeah, because after the Manowar concert, when I went home and I pissed in the toilet and I could not hear my stream of pee hitting the, I knew something was wrong. And when that was still going on 2 days later, yeah, I started wearing earplugs.
I am so glad that you bring that up, because I have to say that was painful, loud. I don't think I've ever heard anything as loud as that concert that night there.
No, it was
painful.
And we've seen a lot of crazy concerts.
Yeah. And you mentioned Krokus playing at Music Mountain. I had to have been there for that. Who did they play with there then?
Ted Nugent.
Oh yeah, I was definitely there. Nugent was the headliner, obviously, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, wow, yeah. I was definitely at that show. I don't know, going back to Krokus, I think I liked that album a lot better back then than I do now. It's just one that didn't hold up with that test of time, you know. So anyhow, we're going to move over to Denny Barth, and he is our scorekeeper and our teacher for tonight. So he picked it out. I threw a couple of these albums on there, like Manowar and Exciter, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to, like, because we did so many other episodes on like Melissa, like Merciful Fate
Of course.
and Show No Mercy and all that, like 1983, like Ed mentioned, what a fucking year for metal. And your friend Denny was 17 years old and way past go.
Way past go.
And I didn't realize though, like when we made the list, I didn't think of it, but like somebody this week tagged my band Aggression as the bad boys of trash. And I look at the list of these 6 bands, and we had brawls with 3 of those 6 bands. Like it's kind of like kind of weird to think about it, but I'm looking at it, it's like, yeah, my drummer fought that guy. Oh yeah, and I fought that guy. Oh
Well,
yeah.
now we do have about 20 minutes left. So Denny, you can tell a couple of stories and maybe even give one for Ed for the booking Raven so many times.
Yeah, but it's funny, like after the years you see the guys again, and now we're in our 50s, and like, like I guess like the we don't have that like young wanna like crazy anymore, and we can laugh about it now. But yeah, so yeah, like like in 1983, every trip to the record store was there was really like not really like miss. It was all hits. And that list is definitely a reflection of that. So my number 6 choice is Manowar into Glory Ride. Similar to Christian and well to Ed also mentioned it, but I Manowar never really. I tried like there's some songs I like, and there's one song on Into Glory Ride that I love is Gloves of Metal. I always play that riff. I love the way it sounds, but there was something about those guys. I don't know, and I know my drummer and Joey DeMaio had some serious issues, but yeah, like it's just a type of album. Like there is some songs I like. I like Secret of Steel. I like Revelation, but it's not my favorite Manowar. I think I like Hail to England better. So on that list, but they have their own sound. It sounds crushing and heavy and like menacing, and it's good. But to me, it was not. I would not like be like, yay, Manowar, right? So that's a number 5. It's Raven All for One, and man, I was kind of disappointed. I love Wiped Out so much, like, and on this album, there's no Star War, there's no Chainsaw, there's no Faster Than the Speed of Light, like, so and plus, the other thing is those songs from this album sound so much better on their live album, Live at the Inferno, that came out like the next year. I thought there was more the energy was more captured. So some of the song like from the album, like Take Control, it sounded much better live. You can feel that energy. Like those guys were insane back then, like dressed like in like hockey gear, jumping around like freaking maniacs. But yeah, so Raven, number 5. Number 4, I put Krokus Headhunter, and you know what? Like Krokus is one of those bands that I love hardware. I love like One Vice at the Time. I love those first 3 records. And I really like Headhunter, even though like Screaming in the Night was way like I never liked it. Like what those guys are doing, like especially with the way the singer looks and singing it just didn't connect well. I saw them open for Def Leppard. Def Leppard were fucking idiots. And like Krokus really made like completely blew fucking Def Leppard. And they were touring for like Headhunter, and like Def Leppard was doing Pyromania, and like they started with Headhunter, double kick drum, and it was just like what a great show. But yeah, like on that album I really like Russian Winter as well. I love that song, and of course Night Wolf, fucking amazing riff to learn when you're younger. And Headhunter, of course. We did so like in like when World War III happened in Montreal, all the bands like Celtic Frost and Destruction, Voivod, and Nasty Savage, they all came to Aggression's jam space, and we did a jam of like Headhunter with Tom Warrior on vocals and like Schmear playing bass and all that. So
Wow.
and everybody knew the song, like we could all play it. So it's kind of cool story. After that, I'll go with Anvil, Forge and Fire. I really like, to me, like Metal and Metal and Forge and Fire goes together. Like, I mean, and because like of songs like Winged Assassin and Motor Mount, like just like super fast metal for that time. I was with Shadow Zone, but the funny thing about this album is like, so this album, Forge and Fire, is the reason why every Aggression album starts with the letter F. Because at the jam space, the cassette was stuck in our like tape player. So every time we partied and every time we did anything, we listened to Anvil, Forge and Fire. So there was a band Damnation across from us, always with the same problem with Sodom, like Blasphemer, like that only song they listened to it. It was playing there like 24/7 all the time. Blasphemer, all the time. But in our jam space was that cassette, and because of like Forge and Fire and Free of the Wind and Future Wars, we said, okay, like from this day forward, all the Aggression album will start with the letter F. So that's why. And then okay, so after that, I'll go with Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac. I mean the production on that, like I don't even know how today you could reproduce that sound. It sounds like they have like 5 distortion pedal, like one after like Heavy Metal Zone, and then the DS1 Boss, and then like everything they could find, it like all lined up. It sounds like it is so like Razor sounding, like guitar sound, and it works. I couldn't believe these guys were from fucking Ottawa. Like Ottawa is like Washington D.C., right? It's just a bunch of people like working for the government, and I'm like, these guys are from Ottawa. Like, are they like in jail? Like, what's wrong with those guys? But yeah, like there's not a bad song on that record. And like for me, Rising of the Dead, Heavy Metal Maniacs, and up and like I couldn't name them all. But the one I really enjoy listening for the last like 10 years the most is Iron Dogs. And it's just when it goes fast, like the way that Beeler kicks in with his fucking like behind the beat, like almost too old to play drums, but he was young then. But it's just like the drag on the riff is just, it's so heavy. So amazing band, amazing album. And then number 1, I think it's because like every time somebody would come to my house and be, oh, you have anything cool to listen to? I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. Check this out. And I would put Oz Fire in the Brain and I'd be like, what the fuck is that? Right? And they'd all be like, Jesus, where these guys from? Like, I don't know, like fucking Finland or something. But like Black Candle and like Searchlights, Fire in the Brain, like it's so good. It's so good, and it's so fucked up that's the like everything else they did doesn't sound like that. Like it's like a moment of brilliance in their like entire existence. Like, but yeah, Oz Fire in the Brain, and like some of you guys say, like especially the ones that never listened to that album before, you would meet people now and you'd be like, hey, do you know the band Oz? And people like no idea who that is.
What the fuck is that?
Ozzy Osbourne.
But it's so good, right? And this was like, you know, like of course we mentioned like Kill 'Em All and all that, but like that year, like you had like Witchfinder General, you had like Virgin Steel and fucking Savage and like Warlord and Tokyo Blade, like so many fucking albums that like I remember my dad would be like, dude, like how many fucking vinyl are you gonna buy? I'm like, as many as I can, right? Oh yeah, it was there's not many years in the history of metal that has that punch as much fucking power as 1983. And like I believe in the new, like let's fucking like the new kids now, they do great stuff as well, right? I don't want to always like, oh, the 80s so great, so great. But it would be cool to do a show one time and do year against year and try to find a way to be like, okay, what year do we have that could rival with 1983 and like do album against album? And I think it would be a cool.
That's a good idea too. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So that's it. That's my list. So now for the score.
All right, drum roll.
Okay. We have a tie at number 5 and 6, so number 5, I guess.
Yeah.
Our poor Swiss friend Krokus, and my Canadian blood brothers Anvil, at 23 points, came in last. Which when I think about these albums, I never thought Anvil would be there, but it is what it is. After that, you have like Mr. Muscles, Manowar, Into Glory Ride at number 4. Then after that, you have Raven All for One at number 3. And then number 2, Oz, Fire in the Brain. And then number 1, like quite like 51 points over 45, like winner, Exciter, Heavy Metal Maniac. Hard to beat. Christian's gonna have to listen to it more, maybe.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, but
you can maybe have it stuck in your tape deck or in your like.
Yeah.
So
that could shoot up to number 1 for me next week.
Yeah,
that's it. I like hearing Denny's story about Destruction and them coming to this jam room and doing
that's awesome.
Because when Schmier left Destruction, he started a band called.
Exactly.
Sure
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep a copy of Heavy Metal Maniac in my car because when you're driving back from shows at 2 a.m. in the morning, you're trying to wake up, you just throw that on and just crank
You're
it.
awake. You're awake.
You're awake. Yeah.
I think.
And you're speeding. And you're speeding as well. Yeah.
I think on my way to work, I think my number 1 listen to album is Heavy Metal Maniac.
Wow.
Probably my number 1.
Yeah.
I listen to that album all the time.
And what a great send off for the Carolina Fest next week with a band that's performing, winning tonight's battle. Was this all scripted or what?
Not even. It was a fun assignment because I have never listened to these bands before, and my list is pretty much the same as everyone else that's been listening to it from when it came out, and it's still the same for me. It's still fresh for me. It's still the same, so that's pretty cool.
Hey Ed, do you want to? Ed, you got like 3 minutes. You want to tell a story about Raven with bookings, or do you know that one?
Yeah, I can do a quick one. I had them booked to St. Vitus one of the times, and they had played Pennsylvania somewhere like not as far as Pittsburgh, but pretty far down there the night before. So I'm waiting for them. They totally missed sound check, and then I finally hear from them. Their van had broken down in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
Waiting for someone to get a part to them. And at this point, I'm sitting at St. Vitus like, fuck, my show's about to start. I got no headliner. So basically, we pushed the show back another hour, started late, and they're telling me, yeah, we're going to fix the van. We're going to make it. I'm like, okay, I hope so, but I'm really not expecting much. So we start the show. So we started the show an hour late. I think there were 4 opening bands. Got the bands going. Each band played a little bit later. Back then, St. Vitus didn't have the curfew, so I was able to push the show later, so that worked out. And by the second band, Raven was still in Pennsylvania, still waiting to get the part. And I'm like, so basically at that point, I made it a free show because I couldn't charge people to see Raven when Raven wasn't there. Half hour later, they got the part, they fixed the part, they're on their way. And so we pushed the show. Well, the other 4 bands finished, and about half hour later, Raven shows up. It's probably about 12:30 at this point. The Raven came in just like a tornado. Me and a bunch of friends, we all went outside, grabbed all their equipment, brought it in stage. Within 15 minutes later, they were on the stage playing. At that point, like I said, it had been a free show for the last 2 hours, and word had gotten out about it, and they showed up, and the bar was full, so we had a completely packed house. I lost my shirt that night because it was a free show, but it was a fucking fantastic show, and Raven just blew everybody away after breaking down and driving. They were maniacs. Those guys are the absolute coolest guys to deal with. They're great.
Nice guys.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I guess we're out to wrap this episode up. I'd like to thank Tony Dio, Miles Bergeron, Hansi Hilmer, Obi, Count Ralphus, Mr. Stephen Levin, Ed Farsley, Christian. I'm not saying his name because I'm going to mess it up. And Denny Barr. For joining us tonight. Please, in the comments, list some of your favorite album from this bunch, or the list of the top 6. And we will be back again in 2 weeks, and we are going to talk about bands from the 80s in the thrash genre, pretty much, that are still releasing albums within the last year, which will include Metallica, Overkill, Megadeth, Creator, Destruction, and a Canadian band called Voivod are the 6 we're going with, and we all have to listen to those 6 albums. So we got a couple weeks for that, because next week I'm far too busy. I'm seeing the Immolation Obituary tour, and I'm going to the Moonspell tour on Sunday, and I've got a pinball convention next week too. So I got plenty to do. And Friday night show with Steve Levin at the bowling alley, Quinn Spins in Middletown. So we'll see you next time on the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. Boom.